officers.
Oh, there we go.
Mics are on now.
Okay.
Yep.
I have a question in terms of agenda analysis. We have here an election of nomination election of new officers. We're going to have new members coming on to the commission, and I would, unless there's a specific reason we have to do it now, I think the new commission should be, the new advisory committee should actually be the ones to elect the officers, and I would like to hold back on that. Unless there's
That's
an issue.
fine.
Is that a nomination? Because I'll second that. Because I think we need more.
Just a clarification, and I don't think we have
Yeah.
to do a motion. We just
That's
hold it
fine.
back.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we've got public comments, people not on the agenda, and I think I know what Sharon's going to talk about. Come on forward. Give your name and whether you're an Oregon City resident or not.
Okay. Hand these around. My name is Sharon Salvaggio. I'm not an Oregon City resident, but I do have a house that I rent out in Oregon City, so I'm property owner here. I'm here tonight to let you know about a project, two projects actually, that we have going on that are both funded through the Oregon City Community Enhancement Grant program, and that I thought would be of interest to you because you all are dedicated to helping protect natural resources. The first project is that we're working within the city of Oregon City over the next several months to try to recruit as many households in Oregon City as possible to the commitment of being pesticide free. Doing so will help people protect their families and their pets, help conserve pollinators, and help keep local streams free of contaminants and runoff. So we're going to be doing that by recruiting people to volunteer to help us. And we're going to be going and doing outreach at neighborhood associations, tabling at the farmers market, and knocking on doors, door to door in the city, particularly in the Barclay Hills neighborhood, McLaughlin neighborhood. And those will be our first two spots. And we'll move away from there as we hopefully cover all the houses in those neighborhoods. We're choosing those first because they drain into Abernethy Creek, and we're trying to focus on the areas where the aquatic resources are of the greatest concern in the city. So I wanted to bring it to your attention, invite you to join us either as a person who pledges or a person who wants to help us volunteer. There's links on that on the flyer that got passed around. They give you information on doing both of those things.
Which one is it? Both of them?
Yeah, the pesticide-free neighborhoods, Oregon City is what I just mentioned.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, and I think I just have 3 minutes, so I'll quickly just kind of transition to the second project, which is that we are offering a workshop that's going to be happening March 1st at the Environmental Learning Center at Clackamas Community College. We have a really great lineup of presenters, and what we're doing is teaching about stormwater management. It's designed for landscape contractors and also residents of Oregon City. We've done a lot of outreach so far to landscape contractors. We've got a pretty big mailing list. We're working with professional associations and so on. But we're also trying to get the word out to Oregon City residents for them to either come themselves or to, consider when they, hire a landscape contractor, talk to their landscape contractor about this kind of thing. We're trying to teach people about the benefits of, and then also the sort of mechanics of having a rain garden on their property. But we're also going to be talking about green streets and bioswales because we also know that those, as a stormwater management sort of mechanism that cities do a lot of this, and their staff and their contractors are responsible for maintaining these as well. So it's a full day workshop. We've got 2 afternoon field sessions people can take their choice of. One of them is to how to design a rain garden. And we will actually be designing a rain garden on site there at the Environmental Learning Center that will then go in subsequently. The other field session choice will be maintenance, basically how to assess and maintain stormwater facilities. And so we've got some really experienced people who are going to be speaking at that, and we're really excited about that. Renee is helping us with that at Clackamas Community College. So, yeah, we appreciate any, word of mouth or, passing on, information about this that you can do. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
One is, we have to register to attend this workshop?
Yes, yeah. Registration on the workshop, there's information on the flyer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have Reach Out to reached out to local developers and contractors?
Landscape contractors, yes,
What
not
about
to
building
developers.
contractors? Because a lot of times they have their own landscape contractors.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. Something that I've reached out to some homeowner associations, because Clackamas County Water Environment Services is also helping to fund this. So I've done outreach beyond Oregon City to some HOAs that are like in the Happy Valley area. But developers are a really
That's
good
what I'm
idea.
thinking. The people that are developing the new neighborhoods.
Yeah, that's a really good idea.
They're the ones who have
Yeah.
to pre-think this into their development. It might squish your house out, but you know what I mean?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know.
exactly.
But that's core.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't mean to.
No, I
rabbit
appreciate
hole.
any
It's
ideas
the
like
new
this.
moon.
This is good. I mean, because getting the word out is always, you
But I
get
live in
about
Barkley
1 in
Hills
50
neighborhood. I would
people
like
who
to
see
see
something actually decide to come. So you
Oh,
got to
yeah.
get the word out to a lot of people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Now,
We can help with that.
I'd love
Thank
to
you.
be there.
Yeah.
a question for staff. To my knowledge, new developers, their stormwater has to enter into a detention system. Is that not right?
Generally, what they're trying to do is infiltrate on site as much as possible, but given soil conditions. So that's the first priority, but oftentimes the volume and the flow requirements will necessitate detaining and retaining, and then connection to the city storm system in the event of overflow. So given the soil conditions in Oregon City, there's a lot of clay and high water tables, so it is very site specific as to what can be done. But in general, on residential infill properties or existing residences that have been established already, this is an excellent option. And we do try to promote on-site rainwater collection and infiltration as much as possible. So Josh Wheeler, our development services project manager, would be a good contact to do
Okay.
for this stuff too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
I'm in the Barkley Hills neighborhood, and didn't you say you wanted to present in Barkley Hills
Yes.
neighborhood was one of them?
Yeah.
I'll give them a contact and tell them to, is your,
Sounds good. Yeah, I was looking at the
Here, the phone
schedule
number? Yes, right here.
for the meetings, and I put it on my calendar, but I can't quite remember when the
well,
next.
it was
meeting- yeah.
yesterday,
Oh,
and,
yeah, right.
and that's later down
That's
the road,
right.
but
I
they're
think there was
doing
a
the,
conflict,
where they group and get together for the next agenda coming up this next month, so that's when you would
Yeah.
need to be able to say, I want to do this.
Yeah.
So it's coming up, so contact
Yeah.
them now and you'll be on the next agenda.
Yeah, okay,
springtime's
yeah, that's my plan.
perfect.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Yeah,
Yay for you, though, this is
Okay.
great.
This is great, Sharon. Thank you.
thank you so much for your support. Really appreciate the support of Oregon City, and it's really exciting to be able to do this kind of work here.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
A lot of good people. Thank you.
Yeah. And Ryan, is it Shira? You want to come up?
That's good.
Well, it's close enough. It's not right. How do you say
Okay.
it? Come on in and introduce
I
yourself.
think Warren wanted to speak on the cove.
Oh, okay. So it's for a specific item.
Is that right?
Okay.
That's what I put on the form.
Yeah, 585B, Mike, excuse me. Okay, so then we'll go ahead and proceed on to the whole business and to the discussion of the code.
Well, that's 5B, and the first item is our city commission goals, but your recommendations to the city commission.
Okay. Yes, excuse me.
But we can switch them if you want.
No. We don't. I presume Laura is here specifically for that item, so we'll go ahead.
I'll be here all night.
You'll be here all night. Well, good. I'm glad to hear that. I believe that Exhibit A is the presentation I made before the, if I open it up, find out for sure. But this presentation I made before the City Commission, talking about our goals and so forth. So that's the item. And we went through this, and I think we pulled these things out to be the things that we wanted to deal with in the next time. Did I send you all the copy of this? Okay, I thought I did.
Earlier, but I'm trying to pull it up.
So you're familiar with it, and I think the intention here is to go ahead and see how we pursue these goals, and part of them, and perhaps in terms of the goal setting the City Commission will be doing. When does the City Commission actually have its goal setting session? Do you know?
February 1st and 2nd, so it's coming up soon.
Okay, so do you have any comments at all?
Yeah, I got a little PowerPoint.
Let's
So
go
we can
ahead.
go through one by one.
Yeah, let's go ahead through one by one.
Yeah, so that's, everything you said is exactly spot on. The City Commission has every biennium, every 2 years, they do a goals setting and they create goals. And then also with that comes the budget. And so I wanted to take the list that NRC so thoughtfully put together and make sure that I understand it, plus give any feedback on what we think these project scopes will look like. And then the challenge right now is to go to the City Commission and give them the list of requests from all these boards and committees. I attached the Planning Commission also, so you can kind of see what they're looking at. And for the City Commission, they'll have to balance out a wide variety of needs for the citizens and a narrow budget and or staff capacity. So I set the goals booklet in front of you now, but you can see in their existing goals booklet, there's literally everything in there, and there's a whole slew of projects. So I think the question for the commission is there a project that you guys really care about versus something you didn't care about, or how could we fit these in? Do they all fit in the goals, or do they fit till departmental things that maybe don't rise to the goals booklet? And if so, how do we move forward on those? What is our capacity to do those? So I want to start conversation to A, make sure I understand your requests, B, figure out which ones you have, if you have any prioritization to the City Commission, or if we can move any of these forward outside that process. So I don't want to leave your list hanging. So that's why I'm here. All right, so I'm hoping that we can just go through each of these one by one. There is the written statement, and basically I took a stab at identifying what your request was, identifying just a broad brush of what it would take to implement that project, and then I gave a staff recommendation. I will end up having a staff recommendation to the City Commission in a couple weeks of the goals retreat. So if you tell me you want a project, I will say they want this project. If for some reason we think it can happen or it can't, it will be in that recommendation. So everything will go up to City Commission. It's their ability to decide what gets funded and what doesn't. So the first one was, these are in the order in which they were asked on the sheet. The first one was a big project. You know all this, but I guess I'll summarize it for the viewing audience, which is 2017 or 18, either at the end of 2017 or in the beginning of 2018, we identified a wetland that existed outside our natural resource overlay district. As we know, our natural resource overlay district protects streams and wetlands through the use of vegetated corridors. We don't regulate the feature itself, just this buffer of native vegetation around it. And the Natural Resource Overlay District, or NROD's purpose, is to encourage development not to happen in these landscaped areas, and to, if it does, to do some mitigation for it. And so we had an inventory from 1999 where we figured out where all the streams and the wetlands were. Turns out we didn't figure out exactly where all the streams or wetlands are because more recently we identified a wetland which was outside the overlay district. How overlay districts work is very regulatory. So you have to identify where the boundaries of the overlay districts are and what happens if development occurs within those boundaries. In this particular case, the wetland was outside the overlay, so the city didn't have any authority to require development be set back from the stream. So we're working on a project now to put the vegetated corridor around that wetland. And Pete's the planner on that. He called DSL and we got an inventory of every wetland that's ever been registered with them. And we checked it to make sure it also is in our overlay district. And luckily enough, that's the only one that was never in any overlay district that we could never regulate. So that's all good news. So that's a side project that we're moving forward on. Some of the requests related to two things. One is that, there was a mention of that, which we're doing and moving forward. So I don't think that it really rises to the goal setting thing because Pete's on it and he's good. And then the other thing was updating that inventory. Since the 1999 inventory, we have updated the map. And we updated the map using LiDAR, and Pete's gonna help me with any of this to fill in the conversation too.
Right.
But we used other technology to update the overlay district as best as possible. But what we didn't do is walk around the city, which is what happened in the original one. They went boots on the ground and fact checked some of these. So we did some research and we figured out it's very expensive to do this. We checked to see if there's funding for it, and it turns out there's not. And it's also a very intensive thing to do since you're ultimately getting people on the ground checking where all these features are. It is quite the process. So what I'm recommending, though, is that this is a good project, but I'm recommending that this be in a list that doesn't happen in this biennium, but it happened in next biennium. In this biennium, the project that I am recommending is an update to our comprehensive plan. Our comprehensive plan is the basic guidelines to the city. There's a natural resource chapter in the comprehensive plan, and that discussion can start to have these higher level discussions about this project is needed, and it could give a lot of support to this project in the next biennium. And it can help us think about how we protect our natural resources and are there other things we ought to do. So it does, to me, seem like it would be good in the next biennium, but I'm also saying that because we only have 4 people in the planning division and we have to process applications and do these other long range projects too. So that's this one. What are your guys' feedback on that?
A question. The inventory that was done in 2009 was for the whole urban growth boundary?
1999 or?
Yeah, 2009, excuse me.
Shapiro, the UGB at that time.
Yeah.
And then we had UGB expansions.
Yes, and those weren't covered by the inventory?
Those are not covered by the inventory as far as I'm aware. So what that means is that the on the ground part of it for those new areas is yet to be done. The expectation is that if any of that area gets annexed and a proposal for land use comes in, our NROD boundary, not the inventory itself, but our natural resource overlay does extend to the UGB. And it's based off of Metro's Habitat Title III and Title 13 maps, which we have adopted. So it's contingent on the developer to do the site-specific inventory when they are about to submit the application and determine the true location of those resources. So,
Because we have had annexations occurring within the new master plan areas.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, and those are annexations, which is simply changing the city boundary.
Right.
As opposed to a site-specific development plan, which is when we would require that on-the-ground site survey be done.
But we did do the Title 3 and 13. I mean, we did apply it.
We applied Title 3 and Title 13 and have maps, but
And you're saying they'll do the analysis when the disturbance is proposed?
when the disturbance
Or development.
proposed, right? Which, that's acknowledged in all of the concept plans, is that a Goal 5 inventory. In the case of the South End concept plan and the Park Place concept plan, that Goal 5 inventory for the new expansion area has not been done, and it's acknowledged in those concept plans. In the case of Beaver Creek Road, there was a site-specific survey done on Trimble Creek.
Does that establish then an NROD?
And that one's, they're all in the NROD. Yeah. So it's a technicality. I don't think it creates a risk for, these resources not to be protected. They are protected. But,
Well, when we know that there's an NROD that's not correct, is there a way that you can correct it? We know of one.
Yeah, well, that is in the code right now. So if a resource is slightly different than what's mapped,
Well, this one was way off.
yeah, exactly. If a resource is slightly different than what's in the adopted map, and then the site plan would reflect that. If that resource is touching the current NROD boundary, then the NROD boundary comes around it. And this one, Kenema, was not that situation. It was
I'm
entirely
also
isolated.
thinking, and it doesn't impact development because it's within a park, but I was thinking Filbert Run, where the inventory is really on an upland portion, not on the wetland portion.
Yeah, that's frequently happens. And I think the LiDAR data that we're referring to helps a little bit with that because the contour is much more accurate. And so you can determine where the wetter areas are going to likely be. But in that case, it is, the NROD touches the entire tax lot. And so, yeah.
So I'm going to talk through each of these, and then at the very end, I have a slide for us to figure out next. Next thing is the heritage tree designation. As we know, there's an opportunity for the public to designate trees as heritage trees. Sound like there are two things happening. One was there's a code requirement for arborists to review these trees to make sure that they are healthy upon designation, and then also upon removal. And so I think the two questions are, is there any way to get money for this? And I do think that we should put a request to do $300 a year for NRC to allocate, so that staff could then manage getting arborists out there. It is a reasonable request. And I think I can pull money from other places. I know 300 sounds like not very much, but the planning budget is not very big. And then also, so that does make sense in a way to help subsidize some of those. That way you guys can decide how to spend the money. Apparently the arborist, consulting arborists, the price varies depending on what kind of report you have and what the site is like. So that might be 1 or 2 a year or something like that. And then the next one was more about the Heritage Tree Code. You guys had proposed an amendment in the code amendments that are happening right now. Planning Commission didn't bite on that, so it's still in the record, but it's not included amendments to the Heritage Tree Code. So staff's also identified that, perhaps we should take a look at citywide tree regulation after the comp plan. So again, we're looking at natural resources in the comp plan. We regulate trees in very specific situations, and together it includes a fair amount of tree regulations, but they're not, it's like a long list. If this, then we regulate. If not, we don't.
Plus
So
it's
maybe,
in 4 separate chapters in the
Yeah.
code, you know.
so maybe like a holistic approach to how we regulate trees and really thinking about when we ought to regulate tree removal or planting or whatever it is, but just thinking about it in a very specific and targeted way. So that is my suggestion for heritage trees.
So, if I might, first of all, are you redoing the concept plan? Is that a goal?
The comprehensive plan?
Comprehensive plan?
We recommended it. There's a weird timing happening because I don't know what the city commission goals are until they go to the goals retreat. It is a tentative goal that we had proposed. So I don't know because they haven't decided yet, but it seems rather likely that a comprehensive plan update will occur.
Okay. We've had very few people have come up and nominated trees for heritage trees. And I don't know if the cost is a factor. But in hiring an arborist to do that, when I nominated and got the tree at my own property as a heritage tree, I think it only cost me $25. I didn't have to go through a process.
You didn't have to have an arborist report.
I did not have to have an arborist report. And the question is this, if a tree that is a heritage tree is diseased, it can be taken out. And the question is, if it's not obvious that it's diseased, why can't it proceed anyway without having to go through this rigorous effort on the part of the person or people that want to do that? Is it really necessary? Yeah. No person's going to want to nominate a tree for a heritage tree if they already know it's diseased. If it's not apparent to the property owner that it's diseased, why should that hold the process back?
Yeah.
And or if the property owner.
We've given this a lot of thought over the years, obviously.
Yeah.
I think the initial response to that may not be as valid as it once was, because I think initially we were like, well, if the city's going to apply this protection to this and provide a higher burden of proof that you cannot remove that tree because now it's suddenly something that has public protection essentially. We wanted to be sure that it wasn't a hazard at the time that it was designated. But there are probably more than one way to deal with that, because if you clearly state in whatever protection we provide that is entirely on the owner to care for and maintain, and the risk is all inherently private, even though the public gets to view the tree and the city commission has a role in deciding whether the tree is gone. Because currently, if you record that covenant, the city commission makes the decision to extinguish it. And so...
And you see, you've done that because that beautiful sugar maple, of course...
On 7th Street.
On 7th Street. I don't know if it was actually diseased or not, but in fact, it became a hazardous tree and it got removed.
Yeah, exactly.
And that tree had been already under good arborist care already.
That's true.
So that tree was cabled together. It was loved.
So...
And stuff happens.
Yeah.
But, we've got beautiful oak that's on there, and they didn't have to have an arborist report. You didn't have to. It's a huge stumbling block.
Yeah.
It is.
Yep. Well, we did have a
And the owner
simpler
still has
heritage
to
tree
remove
code.
the tree anyway if it's...
Before 2012, we had a heritage tree code that was a lot simpler, and it was based on heritage criteria.
Yeah.
So, we could look at going back to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as far as the code amendments go, the city commission is ultimately the one who decides what code amendments get adopted and what don't. We have a list of when they're going to talk about trees. So you can look on you can go to that agenda and you can, show up as a committee and testify to them as well. Since you did testify to planning commission, so.
Oh, are you talking about the February meeting?
He is March 6th. Anyway, Peter will let you know.
So we have a schedule of hearings set up for the code amendments right now for the city commission to go back through and familiarize themselves with what the recommendations are coming out of the planning commission. And one of those meetings is going to be devoted to partly to trees and recommendations from the Planning Commission on trees in annexation areas, which we're going to talk about as well. So.
Next thing is stream naming.
Let me say that this is not a priority for the Natural Resource Committee. This is a process being taken by the Great Oregon City Watershed Council. But we are working, we're informing the Natural Resource Committee of our intent, and perhaps would ultimately need to work on procedures to have those names done. Now, Richard Craven, who is on the Natural Resource Committee with the Great Oregon City Watershed Council with me, he's called for a meeting that we're having on this coming Saturday, in which we'll be talking to a person that knows the procedures for going through this process. But the Great Oregon City Watershed Council has put up, I think, a total of 13 signs throughout the city, indicating where there's streams. Our focus would probably be going through a process to get the naming of those that simply say stream crossing, because they don't have a formal name. We're planning to put a couple up. We'll be putting up a couple more signs. So, but the Natural Resource Committee has indicated that they would support that particular effort. But the actual, it'll be. We would want to have a process that would involve the city. We'd want to probably get the neighborhood association involved, and perhaps, and most likely, the Confederated Tribes and Bands of the Grand Ronde as well. That almost has to occur in terms of a formal tree naming process. So this is not an item for a goal for this group, but the group is supporting this effort.
Okay.
Okay, that's good
Okay.
to clarify.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, we ended up trying to research what the process would be, and it does seem, we would love to talk to the
Arduous.
speakers too. There's everything from, there's this federal commission we want to talk to, but the government shut down, so we can't. Also making sure that we connect with other entities that map streams as well. We changed Caulfield Creek. Is that what the one?
Yeah, it was Canfield Creek.
So that's our experience.
And also you changed the official maps, the GIS maps, put Singer Creek as a tributary to Newell Creek.
Newell Creek, yeah.
And misnamed that one.
Yeah.
So the mistakes are made in the process.
So the next one is the geologically significant designation. And so we did a little bit of research. We talked to both the Burns from PSU and from DeGrom.
We've spoken to him too.
Yeah, and so we can't seem to find that there is a geologically significant designation, but that we can come up with our own local geologically significant designation, like heritage trees. We can come up with a program, we can figure out how we want to implement that program, and we can do that on our own. We couldn't find a comparable city or other type of program, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. That just means that we weren't totally sure how to move forward and what we're regulating and why. The other thing that's complicated with applying this to property is making sure that, this was talking about specific property. We don't really know what the future use of that property is. So I recommended sort of holding off until the city commission determines what to do with property before we designate it. But it would, in all reality, it takes a while to come up with this program anyway. So,
the intent of this was to not necessarily regulate it, but make the public aware of the significance of the geology in our city. And of course, that whole basalt is associated with the falls, and the fact that the soils and the upper Willamette are so deep because we have this dam basically that holds everything back there. Mm-hmm. So that whole area is significant to the whole state, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it really is. And you can so if you're standing at the top of Waterboard looking over, you can so definitely see the cutaways and the faults. And our side of the river is so significantly different than the Westland. And Tualatin has gone on and made whole walkways where you can see the effects of the old repeated Missoula floods. I went to go visit Colt Ponds the other day. We have that with our walls, our basalt walls. We just need to get the ivy off them so you can see them. That's happening. But I mean, and you can actually see we could look at little things and you can see the area move.
And then
We're a slippery slope.
if it's for public education and
Yeah.
tourism, is this the right avenue, or do we want to do other stuff like workshops or educational or science?
And I don't know, did we say the public works upper yard specifically? We were talking about the Waterboard Park itself. We weren't focusing, I mean, we realized.
Yeah, it was more general.
Yeah,
this is more
I think we kind of hope not to lose the parking because.
I know there's been discussions in Parks and Recreation about that area, but we recognize this as part of a geological significant area, but we were thinking of that whole bluff, actually.
Oh, the whole bluff, more than just city-owned property?
Right.
Yes.
Okay, anyway, so maybe it might be a good, the other thing is figuring out how much you guys have on your work plan as a committee, and I don't know if you prioritize that work plan or not, but figuring out how to highlight that.
Or
This
possibly
right way.
maybe they can just kind of put a hold on that upper lot. I mean, I hate to say it, but that was the best parking.
Well, I
I'd
think-
go to a park
Yeah,
without
but-
parking.
But that's going to be a discussion
Yeah.
in its own right, and the point is geological significance of the whole area is, really extends all the way to the Willamette Narrows, and
Yeah.
It's bigger.
and so it's a bigger area, and
Yeah.
the notion wasn't to put restrictions on property owners that might be within this geological significant area, but making people aware of how significant the area is. That was my feeling in terms of our discussions.
Feels like there's a really good public education / working with
Yeah.
tourism, but also some,
Well, there's been big
Something
discussions for big pictures of
Yeah.
nonprofits doing educational things down in there, but that's, again, we're looking at years down the
Well, I
road
think,
too.
one of the best views from the promontory,
Right.
Oh, yeah.
There's a place where people park at the top, but there's no signage whatsoever.
That's right.
There's nothing
Right.
that explains it.
yeah.
And there's
Yeah.
actually a couple
Yeah.
other dead
And
end
I'm
streets.
reluctant to say this to the Natural Resource Committee. You cut down a few of those trees, you can see the balls.
Speaking of cutting trees,
I think we're right at a slippery slope.
You think about it, there are no logs hardly at all in that park, and they create habitat.
Jerry's not here.
I'm not sure you'd argue with that, actually. I mean, if it was part of a plan that actually created habitat where the salamanders, of course, salamanders can hide in boulders too.
There is that constant stream that goes down through the falls. Remember, we said, let's name it Doug or Dee Dee Stream. I said Dee Dee.
I didn't
And
say
you said, and I think you said, I think it's
I did.
and I said, let's change it, But anyway, but there is a natural area down there and it puddles right down into the next bottom ones.
It was actually, I think, intended more from an educational standpoint to talk about the significance of that whole basalt area.
Yeah.
perhaps maybe we should think, it might be broadened to figure out how
Yeah.
to highlight and emphasize.
Right.
Okay.
And someday that, what was it, revocable easement that's given with a pathway.
Revocable, but that guy, I think I called for permit the very next day.
That would actually take a trail further along. We got that nice trail that goes from the promontory there, and you can go down get onto JQ Adams
Right.
by taking that trail on. It'd be nice to have a trail going the other way.
And just remove some of the barriers that are just keeping it from being a trail, because that's man-made barrier.
Well, anyway.
Scott, we're
it was
degrading,
not-
we're
it was-
degrading.
It was not a focus on our part to talk
sorry.
specifically about the public workshop.
Oh, well,
It was broader.
I think that's where my translation gets lost.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm glad we're here.
Yeah.
You can set me straight. Next is talking about tree removal during annexation. You guys had made a comment also on these code amendments. The code amendments added a factor for annexation. Annexations are a little bit different than the other code criteria that you're used to where you have to meet them all. Annexations, you have to have a positive balance of factors so they can decide how to weigh each of them. Anyway, so in the proposed code amendments, the Planning Commission added a factor that if significant tree cutting happened during the annexation process, that could play into the decision-making on if the property got annexed or not. So for this one, I think you also have that in comments on tree removal during annexation in the legislative file and record. So you can come to planning or to the city commission when they talk about trees as well. And then also, again, like before, we're suggesting that maybe we take a more comprehensive look at tree regulation after the comprehensive plan. Okay, so here's the summary slide. And here's where tell me how to move things around and what you want to do. We've given a lot of really good feedback. So what I'm thinking is we're already doing the Kenemo wetland where the tree clearing during annexation is already happening through the code process. So we'll take the stuff that's happening with the code and set it aside a little bit. And then, yes, more money for funding heritage trees. And then you guys can continue to advocate for whatever code amendments you want during the code amendments process. And then, hold off on the other ones. The more we talked about the geologically significant designation, though, the more that sounds like kind of figuring out how you want to highlight the geology of the area and then figure out what work products come out of that as a part of your work plan or something like that.
Yeah.
Let me know. I talked a lot. I want to hear from you, but I talked a lot, so I'm sorry for that. But what should I tell the city commission?
I would suggest that there's something that the Natural Resource Committee is looking into. We don't know what the process would be. You've indicated you don't know that there's any process within the state to do such a thing, as I understood you.
For the stream naming?
No, I was talking about the geological significant designation.
Correct. When we can't find someone who does know. But they said we can do our own program and we can administer whatever we want as it relates to designations. But
in terms of the stream naming, I talked about that to the city commission, and there are, I guess, what we would request is the capability of involving neighborhood associations on that to get involved in that particular process. We'll identify those streams, and then within, for those streams, work with those neighborhood associations to get recommendations, perhaps going through a similar process that the Parks and Recreation does for naming parks. And so it seems to me there would be a process that the city could support in terms of the naming of trees. Should the question come up, who's supporting it? We'd like, of course, the support of the city commission and the city itself.
yeah, I think the only...
And so what would be required of us as we go through this process to get the city on board?
Yeah, I think it'll be really helpful to learn more about who regulates stream names because we want to make sure USGS, is that it, is on board with the stream names.
Yeah, I don't
And-
even know I don't know to what extent they would have a role in naming the smaller creeks, but that's what we want to find out.
Yeah.
We're going to- Scott Burns is a bit of a character, and did you know Shaw Spady?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Anyway, Scott Burns got on the maps for Spady Creek, which is the one I think that had that big 8-acre landslide on it. But that was on her property line where that happened.
How do you do that?
And I asked him about that, how you change the names. He said, "Well, I didn't change the name. I simply got it onto the map."
And that's probably how
So
a
it's
lot
on
of things
it's
end
on,
up
it's on,
getting
it's
made.
on the same map. He was simply able to do that.
Somebody got it on the
because of
map
this
and then-
position. We want something a little bit more formal than that.
Yeah, that's the hard part of the project. We don't even know how we participate in
I anticipate
I see what you're thinking.
on Saturday we might have a better idea of what the
Okay.
process is.
So maybe we'll continue figuring out what the process
but
is.
it's something that this body supports, but
Yeah.
we're not putting the onus is on the Greater Oregon City Watershed Council.
Okay.
That's really interesting. Yeah. Food for thought.
So next steps. I will probably revise my thing and then I'll send it out to you.
Revise
Okay.
the letter.
Yeah, I want to make sure that I communicate everything right. And so I'll revise it and then,
We'll send it to all of us.
yeah,
Okay,
I'll send
very
it
good.
to all of you guys and then so it's February 1st. You don't have another meeting before then, but I guess just give me your individual comments. Is that okay?
Yeah, I know it really depends upon the commission itself. When I was on the commission, we invited some comments during the goal setting session. I don't know if that will happen.
They do. They have actually a couple places both days
Good.
that you can do comment as well. Yeah, I was just feeling bad because they have all these projects I'm sure they want to do, projects we said, you should do this, and then projects from other groups. So they have these mountain of asks and very few resources. So I'm trying to figure out how to help them prioritize.
Now, I'm going to ask Brian if he wanted to speak on A or is waiting for B to come up. Okay, very good.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, item B, planning commission request.
Okay, I'll kick this off. So following your presentation last meeting by John Van Staveren of Pacific Habitat Services, which was December 5th, and it was suggested that, informally discussed the possibility that native plantings could be recommended beyond the 50-foot vegetative corridor, which had been approved by the Planning Commission when they first reviewed and approved the Cove Master Plan in 2008, and actually 2009.
Now, I have a question.
Go ahead.
I was on the commission at that time, and I don't recall either the Urban Renewal Agency or the City Commission being informed of that.
Right, and so
I
that.
know if we had been, I would have.
Right. So the master plan process is what they call a type 3 process that the planning commission has authority over.
Right.
And so a final decision is a planning commission decision in that situation, and they were the final decision-making body for that reduced corridor. So, we had a 200-foot vegetative corridor width requirement in the Water Resource Overlay District, which was the old name for the Natural Resource Overlay District. And the request was supported by a water resource report prepared by Pacific Habitat Services based on an assessment of the current condition of the cove at the time and a proposal to mitigate. So the typical way that mitigation plans work, depending on the size of the project, is the mitigation is the last thing that gets done after the development is constructed, because you have landscaping. First you have grading, then you have construction, and then you ultimately can come back in and ameliorate and plant. So they propose a planting plan in the early days based on what they know the impacts to the vegetative corridor to be. And in this case, the decision to have a 50-foot corridor from the high water mark of the cove was proposed, and that is carried through to the current amendment. And
Let me ask you, let me just interrupt you for a second, if I may. Was this done in terms of the development of the project on the cove?
it was a concurrent application with the original concept plan.
Okay.
Yeah. It was a WR file, water resource file. And yeah, we have to permanently archive all the reports that are associated with that. And then they're in storage. We don't have electronic copies of that, but if it's something that we need to pull out as part of the public record for the review, you know, it's probably a good thing to have. It was well documented. I looked back through the Planning Commission videos and then the original staff report, which was prepared by Tony Conkle. He was senior planner at that time. And they referenced the water resource report prepared by Pacific Habitat. And that report is probably going to have a lot more detail in it than just the staff report that we wrote, you know, because that's a basic set of land use findings and it refers to all of the detailed reports in the application. With the current amendment, you know, they're relying on that original decision, but they're also proposing a mitigation plan based on the current condition of the cove, because since 2008 to now, there's been a lot of, you know, growth of existing cottonwoods and various things, but the basic premise remains the same, was that there's a requirement to do balanced cut and fill because you're in a floodplain. Part of the recommendation for habitat restoration coming out of from John Runyon's report and from Pacific Habitat Services is that the vertical banks of the cove don't create a good environment for establishment of certain types of plants. And so it's partly a need to grade those back to establish that as well.
Well, would that be part also associated with the cut and fill requirements that are there at the site?
I beg your pardon?
With that, reducing the slope of the banks there, is that going to be used also for the cut and fill requirements, or do you know?
Well, I know that
At this point, maybe you don't know.
we could probably ask the applicant that, but yeah, I think that it's a big site and there's a need to try to balance cut and fill as much as possible within the project site.
Yeah.
And I think tract A, but it would be an opportunity for cutting and filling over there, but it has to be part of this review. This early grading proposal, which is what this is an early grading proposal, has a geotechnical report and a cut and fill report associated with it, which we didn't really talk about at the last meeting, as far as the volumes of soil that are getting moved around. But I would want to ask the applicant if they have more information on that.
Of course, we made recommendations. What was the person that came here and spoke to us?
John Van Staveren?
Yeah. And we recommended that in terms of their plantings to actually extend the native plantings beyond the 50-foot requirement right into the right up into the area where the pavilion and so forth and the walkway is going to be, I should say.
You're right. So, and
he seemed amenable to that notion.
Yeah, he did seem amenable to that. What I'd mentioned, you know, in terms of native species requirements, I think we've had this question in the past on other projects from landscape architects, is like, do they have to use the native species, or can they use the native species hybrid or some hybrid of it?
I hate to say that it usually shrinks him down into a dwarf.
Well,
I mean, that was
I
one
don't
of the
know.
discussions was
you know, I
tall
mean, there's a
trees
list in that report that John Van Staveren had for the Enrod area itself, which is native species, right? So,
And they want a
we
hybrid
don't have a
because
site.
why?
Pardon?
Why do they want a hybrid?
Well, in some cases, they wanted hybrids because of the urban environment which they would be planting them in and that sort of thing. But, you know, if they're putting them in, you know, planters next to buildings and that sort of thing. It was only, we've only had the question for certain species, you know.
Well, our concern, of course, is
Yeah.
is next to the cove itself.
Oh, no. Yeah, no, that one that's within the NROD. That's regulated by the NROD. So,
Yeah, but
yeah.
we're hoping that when those plans would extend beyond that.
Yeah, so your recommendation and your amendments to it in red here are what's before you and what you could act on this evening. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Pardon? Oh, yeah, sorry.
Now, this document here that we have.
Jerry also has,
Is a sort of, yes.
Jerry's couldn't be here tonight, but he wanted to run these comments by the Natural Resources
Right.
Committee, and he's stated that these are his thoughts, not the thoughts of the Natural Resources Committee. So he put these in writing, and I am assuming that he's going to add these to the record for the planning commission.
Here's what he has both. I picked this up as I was looking through this. Trying to reconfigure the cove to gentle slopes throughout the edge would be very damaging to habitats that have become installed. It should be approached carefully. I guess it's hard to argue with we're approaching something carefully, but I agree with you that those steep areas aren't conducive to that decent of a habitat anyway. And then that was one of the reasons I posed a question, what was part of the cut and fill effort for the developer, and whether that would be necessary. But he says throughout the edge, and I'm not sure the extent of which he's talking about, how big an area he's talking about.
Right, I'm not sure, how extensive he's talking about that either. But there's a couple of, there's several references to things here that I haven't had time to look into. This is points 3 and 4. This letter would probably raise some questions with the planning commission, and staff will need to respond to it at the hearing. And then we're going to be. Right now, we don't have a site-specific plan, so
Right.
we're not approving the mitigation approach at this point in time. What I mean is we're not approving like building footprints and that sort of thing, but the Natural Resource Overlay District report is what's proposed. And the tree removal associated with that is what's being proposed right now, and that is related to the balanced cut and fill. So
Now, there was reference I understood of 100-foot easement to the city. What does that involve?
I'm sorry, 100 foot?
Yeah, did I hear that?
We can have the applicant talk about it. You're talking about something in the DDA agreement with urban renewal on Lot A?
Yes.
Lot 1.
Yeah, and I don't know what they were referring to specifically.
Ryan can talk to you a little bit more about it. He has better details than I.
Okay. Good. All right, now, what I pulled up under, whatever my agenda is, was the City Commission Planning Policy Advisement, and I guess, is there a section there that's dealing with what we're talking about? The first section there is supporting affordable housing units. So, and that's what I picked up under, on the agenda on 2B, I believe. Oh, no, I guess, no, excuse me, that was item B under 5A, which is the Planning Commission request.
Right.
And that had to do with the affordable housing. Was there a reason that this came up for us here, or was it just part of the?
I think we attached these two exhibits to show you what's being put before the City Commission by the Planning Commission. And
Okay.
they wanted to tease out the affordable housing recommendations from some of the other recommendations. And so that's why they have two letters.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
So you, Doug, you may want to, before the committee makes a decision on this recommendation, you might want to
Yes.
invite.
Yes. Would you want to come up, Ryan?
Kind of limping. Good evening, Ryan Shera at Deacon Development, 901 Northeast Gleason Street, Portland, Oregon. We are the co-applicant with the Cove LLC for the project. To answer your question on the balance cut and fill, so yeah, the balance cut and fill is going to basically level out and pull back the steep slopes that are currently up towards the ordinary high water line, and essentially pull it back. We're going to flatten it out for the Esplanade and then also for future Agnes. So at the end of the day, you're going to have it's balanced, right? So it's the same cubic yards of overall excavation and dirt. It's going to be more subtle and slope back. And that should be conveyed in the grading plans.
I'm going to just take a moment. Does everybody know the balance cut and fill concept? And you don't want to decrease the, you want to keep the same flood capacity at the site.
Correct, and I was actually looking at the plans that you are proposed to there on phase 2 and 3.
Yeah, in the
Like you're
NROD
pulling it back
report,
and you're dipping and lifting
It's-
it up, if that's what's going on with that. I was really trying to
yeah.
understand it.
In the NROD report on page 6 is where they talk about grading along approximately 1,600 linear feet of the cove bank to improve functions of the vegetative corridor and provide flood storage.
Yeah, it's all about flood storage, and it kind of doubles as a benefit to the NROD overlay. And to your other question, so being that the NROD is at 50 feet, our application is for 50 feet. And I think what Pete was getting at was, in this application, in this initial application, the CDP concurrent with the NROD, we're not showing any plantings beyond the 50 feet. That'll be in our DDP application. That'll be subsequent to this approval. So that's why you're not seeing it right now.
Right.
It's because we're phasing our approvals. This is for the NROD and the concept development plan, and then we'll come in once our CDP is approved and come in with the DDP, which will then show the plantings beyond 50 feet, which can be commented on at that time.
Okay, excellent. I was on the commission, this was many years ago, when we actually put the 200-foot, I believe it's a 200-foot end rod, not 250-foot.
Correct.
Yeah, so Jerry Herman has 200 feet. And we're following Metro standards, and I actually recommended the city include broader standards than Metro's on anadromous fish-bearing streams and so forth. And I was never made aware of the fact that the Planning Commission had changed those specifications on the code. So it was a kind of a sensitive area for me personally when I just learned about that just recently. I mean, we're not going to put any obstacles, but the thing that occurs to me is the native species plantings could be done beyond that 50-foot area, and that's what I'd like to see. I think Jerry Herman's concerns are a bit broader than that. He seems to be concerned about the actual cutting that you'll be doing and so forth and how it's done. If there could be, I guess if there could be some kind of variation in it to make the landscape not just look like a smooth thing all the way across the project.
The beachfront.
Yeah.
You're talking about above, beyond the 50 feet?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've got some kind of carve outs for future kind of sandy beach areas, which I won't speak for John Van Staveren, but it was my understanding at the last hearing that was a good thing to have kind of sandy beach areas.
Got some variability essentially in the natural habitat.
Mm-hmm. And then again, it kind of comes up to a public plaza and esplanade, which there we've got a variation of ground cover and shrubs and trees kind of lining the esplanade. And the esplanade is meandering. It's not just a beeline. So I'm not sure what you have in your packet, but...
Well, I noticed you're going to remove a lot of the metal that was just dumped down in there. It was part of the logging, storage, and stuff area. There's 2 beaver dens down there. I know of one, very active one, and maybe that is what he's concerned about is some of the habitat that's going to happen along the banks that might chase them away, being sensitive about
that maybe
nesting areas.
I'm unaware of the beaver dam, so. Yeah.
Okay. I don't have quite a lot to say here, but.
Well, are the dens into the soil or? Yeah.
No, they're in the side of the mountain.
Yeah.
They're in their dead end.
Oh,
Yeah.
They're up underneath that.
So are we talking about the spit or someplace else? Where the dens are?
They're underneath that big outbreak that comes down where all that metal is.
Yes.
And where the vultures hang.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. That's right. There's a den. There's an active den there.
Mm-hmm.
But there's about 5 or 6 of them that stream along all up through there, and I would assume some of them. One of them has moved. Has disappeared. I'm sure it's gone somewhere else.
Is this on the peninsula or?
No, it's where the overhang is. That's quite dangerous. That's fenced off, and there's all the metal spikes down in there. There's an active den up underneath there. I know my dog has been down there, and she's a bad girl. She tells me all the time where you're not supposed to be. I have one of those. Doesn't belong on Metro property.
So,
But I was just wondering if that, and then, we're losing a lot of the tall trees. I'm a tall tree hugger, and our rapture and our birds really need that. But then I wasn't sure how many were left. I was trying to count them, but I'm doing all this on my phone when I was counting the removal and the trees. But I was very excited about all the mitigation where there would be low functioning, high functioning after you were done. I like that.
Yeah, I think
Before,
ultimately,
that was I was kind of going, there's a better story.
Yeah, and the better story is you're gonna experience that after our mitigation plantings mature after a number of years. I think it's a trade-off for the amount of work that needs to be done in order to get this property across the finish line in terms of, there's a lot of work that needs to be done, especially earthwork and mitigation work, to get it back to where it needs to be. And obviously when you're doing mitigation work, a lot of stuff is newer plantings and it's obviously going to take time, but over time, I think what we're doing ultimately is going to be beneficial.
There's some good figures in John Van Staveren's report that indicate
the improvements.
extent of the enhancement areas in square feet and where the NROD boundary is in relation to the esplanade. And so as Ryan said, we don't have a landscaping plan for the area beyond the NROD at this point. And I would expect that as subsequent phases come in, this will be, it'll be more refined. So.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
we'll be interested in talking to you as the process goes on.
Sure. So, question. So, during the DDP, do you guys review that application as well? How does that work?
Well, it depends on if that's going to be a staff level DDP or a type 3 that goes back to the planning commission, because there's thresholds that
Gotcha.
be one or the other.
Understand. Okay.
Yeah, but either way, the Natural Resources Committee will have notice of it. The tricky part is that they don't always meet when that meeting coincides with the public comment period.
Mm-hmm.
So that means that either they can comment individually as a public, and only comment as the NRC when their meeting is publicly noticed a week in advance.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Or submit written.
yeah,
Testimony.
individual written comments are fine.
Yeah.
And then in this situation, we were able to meet formally with public notice in a public meeting to consider a joint recommendation from the NRC, which is not always the way it works.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Anything else? Is that fine?
No,
Well, thank you for coming out. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
thank you.
Okay, go back on the floor here.
Yeah, so just to elaborate, there is an NROD mitigation area plant list associated with the plan, but no quantities associated with it yet. So there's some work to be done. Yeah. No numbers of plants or spacing, recommendations on how to plant them, and that sort of thing. That's what we would expect in a more detailed mitigation plan.
Now, let's take a look at the draft advisory, NRC advisory recommendation here regarding the code. Well, that was in fact basically what we said at our last meeting. Is there anything else that we would want to include in this recommendation at this point?
You know me and tall trees, I'll just leave it myself.
No, the point is, and I will tell you that the cottonwoods are dangerous trees, and I think there are trees that we've talked about that, and we made recommendations in terms of having conifers on the site. That
There was one Douglas fir I saw.
Huh?
Yeah, I saw one Douglas fir on the list.
Yeah. So we recommended granifers and so forth, and as the process goes forward, I hope they actually consider some longer living trees and
Right.
what we're coming forward there.
Yeah, actually, I should clarify
I
what I just
saw
said.
one at White Oak too.
The mitigation plant list does have minimum numbers of trees. They're saying minimum 440 trees, minimum 2,202 shrubs, and then the seed mix. And then the largest tree, obviously, on the list is a Oregon white oak, which would not be right next to the water. It's gonna be- And then you've got some cascara, Oregon ash, and then most of the other things are smaller trees. Yeah.
They're mostly deciduous trees, and like I said, we were hoping to see something that would be there in 100 and 200
Yeah.
years' time.
And we need to think that way. We're taking out the
Well,
trees that are
it'll be a
100
dynamic
years old.
environment once it's established, you
Yes.
know, so,
Yes.
yeah. It'll continue to be protected and just, maintained over time.
So do we want to adopt this draft, or are there any other recommendations that would come forward?
So I'm just a bit confused because I've got a letter in front of me that's got red in it that's not on here. Has the red been removed or?
So the
I've
black
got
was
two.
what was in the original letter, and I sent that to Doug for some comments, and the red is what Doug suggested we
Okay.
add.
Can I remove
Okay.
it?
Yeah, for sure. Go for it.
So the printed one is what we,
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
The printed one.
right,
yeah.
okay. I was just confused which was the chicken and the
Oh,
egg.
I'm sorry, yeah, yeah, that's,
Is that,
I like the edits.
you like that? It's okay.
Yeah, I like the edits too.
All right.
oh, the only thing I wanted to mention, in red, it says the current delineation created by the planning commission. The planning commission didn't create that delineation, they approved it.
Okay. Go ahead. Oh, go ahead and change
Reviewed it.
Gotcha.
How would you want to say that? Reviewed?
Well, but they passed on it. I say reviewed and approved it.
Approved.
Yeah. I mean, since it was an action.
Yeah, okay. So that's the only thing I would recommend changing.
Okay.
I think I see a typo.
I wouldn't be surprised. Is it in the red? Is it in the red?
It's not red.
Yeah. It's not red?
It's not.
Oh, good. My thing's always have
I don't know how my spelling is when I ever see a typo.
Where is it?
I would recommend inserting a word in the sentence, native plant species are required and proposed to be planted as part.
Oh, as part of, yes. As part of. The as is missing.
Very critical part.
Okay.
Yeah.
Doug, you want to make that change?
Yeah. Oh, no, that's fine. Would you, I mean,
Well, I think it ought to come from you.
okay. So I'll figure out, you want me to take the copy and go ahead and
Sure.
put the as in there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Got that? I scribbled because split the wrong spot.
Yeah, no, I'm, let me, if you're ready for this, let's go ahead and make a motion to approve this letter.
I'll make a motion to approve this letter.
Second.
I'll second it. You
Okay,
got
I
it?
think Nancy beat you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And I heard all ayes, so I won't ask for the nays. Okay, yes, sir. Come on forward, if you would, for the mic. We record it.
For us in the audience, what does the letter say?
How's that?
For us in the audience, what does the letter say?
Oh, okay, well, we can read
Do you want me
it.
to read it?
Yeah, go ahead and read it.
All right. So it's a standard template recommendation for the NRC. The Natural Resources Committee of the City of Oregon City, pursuant to Article 3 of the adopted NRC bylaws set forth in Resolution 429 of the City Commission, does hereby make the following recommended action. On December 12th, 2018, the NRC heard a presentation from John Van Staveren of Pacific Habitat Services on the Natural Resources Overlay District report that is part of the proposed early grading request for Phase 2 of the Cove Development planning files listed. The NRC understands that In 2008, the Planning Commission approved a request to reduce the vegetated corridor width for the cove from 200 feet from the ordinary high water mark of the cove, the original delineation under city code, to 50 feet, the current delineation approved by the Planning Commission in 2009 as part of the original master plan approval file number CP 0801. Native plant species are required and proposed to be planted as part of the mitigation for disturbances to the 50-foot vegetated corridor, and the NRC supports this proposal. As a means to further enhance the habitat along the cove, we would like to recommend that the applicant also use native species as much as possible for landscaped areas beyond the required vegetative corridor within the original delineation. Action recommended to the Planning Commission. Above action was recommended by the consensus decision of a quorum of the Natural Resources Committee at the regular meeting of today, and then it will be signed by the chair and vice chair.
Okay,
Great.
very good.
Thanks.
Okay, we have no new business discussion items. I go on to the approval of the minutes.
Let's see. So these are the minutes of February 14th, 2018, and March 14th, 2018.
Thank you.
So let's see, February 14th, we were discussing amendments to the NROD map in Kenema. And the role of the NRC in reviewing NROD applications, various other things. And then we had a presentation on March 14th from Nancy Bush about code enforcement. And some other reports from the committee. We're a little behind on our transcripts, but we'll get caught up.
Yeah, a little bit. You don't expect us to remember what we did on the mistakes, I hope. Do any of our other boards have a secretary that's a board member? Or does this always fall into staff?
Well, we don't have a secretary yet, but we could, assuming.
Well, I'm not recommending it. I'm not recommending it.
I think the role of a secretary wouldn't be so much to deal with the minutes. It would probably be to make sure that your comments are captured in anything that staff takes forward. So that, I do see some value there.
So you're reviewing tapes, I take it?
Yeah, I review tapes, but we have a transcriptionist who reviews the tapes. So, yeah.
Okay. How did I sign myself out? Oh, I'm back in. Okay. Based on what you looked at, does somebody want to make a motion to approve the minutes?
I so move.
I'll second it this time.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And so the approval of the minutes for February and March meetings of last year. Not this year.
It wasn't in March.
Not yet.
Future.
So, any items that people want to bring up?
All right, communications, do you want to go with member reports first?
Why don't you go first?
Okay. The equitable housing project and the code amendment, the other code amendments going forward before the city commission. We've posted the schedule for the next 4 hearings on the city website. So if the public can see what those are. We're going to be going back through the chapters. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time going back through. What we've done is provide hard copies of the entire red line code for each of the city commissioners to comment on, and we'll be answering specific questions that they may have at these public hearings. And what we're doing is each time we have public comment, we update our public comment issues summary and make sure that we're responding. Some of these issues are things that we've already dealt with in the project advisory team process, or as we went through the planning commission project process at the end of 2018. I haven't heard a whole lot of new issues raised at this point, but we are still looking for city commission direction on some critical things that are related to housing, that are related to trees in annexation areas, and what else is of importance? I think the principal thing at the first hearing, which is on the 28th of next week, our consultant Elizabeth Decker is going to be going back through and describing all the new housing types that are going to be defined in the new amendments: accessory dwelling units, internal conversions, cluster housing.
This is before the planning commission?
City commission, sorry.
You said,
Yeah, because the planning commission has already made the recommendation. Yeah.
What did you say though?
Well, the first hearing is going to be on the, sorry, I should have said 16th.
16th. Okay.
16th. And then we're going to the 6th of February, the 20th of February, and then I think 6th of March. Then 20th of March and April 3rd. And it could go longer.
The discussion on tree items is February 20th.
That's the February 20th one.
So the idea is that we put a schedule of what we're going to talk about, and then we talk about it, and then that the doors, hopefully that all the discussion is had, and so we don't talk about it multiple times.
Yeah.
We have 3 minutes to talk about it.
You can.
Well, I didn't know if as a committee we had 3, if we're going to do anything as a committee at that tree thing, or if it's just personally.
Yeah, you can comment as a committee if you authorize someone to comment for you. And you get 5 minutes as a committee, you get 3 as individual. Sometimes people do both.
That's right.
Yeah, Laura came up to me, and I was going to say, I said, are you there as a chair of the Natural Resource Committee with their approval? And I said, well, I'm going to talk about things that we talked about. And says, well, if they did say you could represent you, you only get 3 minutes.
I'm so sorry. Even just ask everybody.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But you do have.
So if you're going to have a spokesperson, you need to authorize them.
Yeah, you authorize it.
The commission can authorize you to have more time.
So I got a kick out of that.
I saw Paul kind of got shuffled a little bit too, so.
Oh, I don't have a lot. I don't have the report.
The other update is we did a Friends of Trees planting on December 1st, Saturday. It was a great success. We planted a lot of trees from a lot of people too. So we actually,
I was thinking it's about 140 altogether. So.
it was just shy of 130
138
trees.
or something like that.
Yeah, they did some.
Well, they had 138 trees there, and then they realized they didn't get 2 trees on our group, and they had to go bring in 2 more trees.
We paid for just shy of 130 trees. There were some, we have this relationship with Friends of Trees, or we pay them, but Yeah, there's some small cases where they'll have to replace a tree that they did last year and then they'll pay for that. So there were more than 100, we paid for 130 trees. So the city subsidizes using our tree fund money. And it's a great program. We love it very much. We expanded the neighborhood planting areas by 5 neighborhoods this year. So it was really nice to get out all over Oregon City. I mean, the room was packed with people wanting to volunteer, and it was a very well organized.
From all over.
All over.
All over.
All over.
I had whole Nike staff I was having breakfast with, and they'd all kind of been here temporarily. It was really cool.
Yeah, it's a really nice community building. We hosted, there was a lunch that the neighborhood, McLaughlin Neighborhood Association hosted. It was really
Breakfast
nice.
and lunch.
Yeah. And trees.
Yeah, that was nice. So, how do your children enjoy it?
They love it every year. They do.
I named 2 of them. I named 2 of the trees. We have one I wanted to name Bill, and we named it Lily after the fish, wasn't it?
I should talk about the pruning.
And then the next one, we named the next tree Bill. Oh, I'm sorry. When I was planting with the Friends of Trees, I was naming the trees. If we can get some bragging rights.
Any other staff report?
No, sorry.
Anybody have something to say? If anybody wants to attend the meeting that we're having on Saturday at 10 o'clock, where we're going to be talking about stream naming and the process, you're welcome to do so. It's going to be at the Oregon City Library. Richard Craven, Richard Craven was the person that got the permit for the city on the cove, if we ever do it, and dredging that part of the cove to open it up. Anyway, he's put together this meeting, and
When is that?
it's Saturday, 10 o'clock at
Which day could be?
the library, in one of the conference rooms upstairs.
I wish I could be there. I'm going to be gone, but dang.
So you're invited to come if you want. Anything else?
Oh, I can't not.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I went to the
We're
Berkeley
expecting
Hills. I went to the Berkeley Hills Neighborhood Association, and they were bragging about trees planted in the Berkeley Hills Park, which happens to be a really nice park and doesn't need help like so many of our others, and it's not even inundated with ivy so much. But anyway, that was kind of really fun and pleasant because there's round of applause. They have a whole new board. And they're energized up there, and it was really exciting. So I then took that moment to stand up as an NRC member and give them our year in review and what we did, because that was in all of our stuff that came. And then took one extra moment to pass out Oregon City Parks Foundation trifolds and invite them to, I might as well make this an announcement, as we all kind of heard it several times, a visionary meeting that's going on January 15th at 7 o'clock at the Oregon City Library. We're going to have a facilitator there to help just bring together some of the visions. One of the people will be there. I should whip out names, but we know how I botched that. So anyway, they'll be here with their list of ideas and hopefully neighborhoods. We want to just kind of capture. We know we're working on Waterboard Park. We know we have multiple phases we want to do there, and grants in the future. Elevated things, bridges. It's a good thing, good plan. We're working with the Lariat people. We're working along the Promenade and Mazursky planning with the Hardy Plant Society. We want to see McLaughlin neighborhood. We've had discussions about the Buena Vista House and getting electricity in that. And we're doing research on how we can get volunteers to help rehab it, maybe with the community, maybe with outreach communities, women's workforce, volunteering. So anyway, come to a visionary meeting. Come talk about what you would like to see, and maybe make a committee and say, I'll take that ahead, or yes. And then they can work underneath the umbrella of the nonprofit. So it's been really cool to see it develop and grow. But we have to take baby steps because we're still a very baby foundation. So there you go.
I really want to compliment Dee Dee on her efforts on the board. You raised from bottles themselves this last year. How much money did you raise for the foundation?
Oh, gee.
Come on.
Just under $7,200, and we matched a grant at $2,800. So that's popping us up into $10,000. One dime, starting at a nickel, now a dime at a piece. So anyone listening, remember you can call Oregon City Parks Foundation and I will deliver you a handful of little blue bags that will equate to about $7 per bag if you fill it up completely without crushing your bottles. If you crush a bottle, they don't count. If you leave your liquids in it, they don't count. Believe me, I do a lot of dumping, but you can't do anything with the crushed. Those equate to about $7 to $8 per bag. We turn that 10 cents into 40 cents. I match volunteer hours. Volunteers are so important. And matching grants. You couldn't throw a better 10 cents anywhere, and it doesn't leave our city. It stays right here.
I want to tell you
That
that
is like cool.
the only reason I drink a beer a night is so I can contribute.
Oh, me too. In fact, I just moved over to a light, so I may drink two because it's after the holiday season. And I can't thank enough. I'm having people call. I really am having people call and having me deliver blue bags to their house. That is where it really needs to go. So anyway, it's a wonderful thing. There's a couple more programs, but we need more people to volunteer. Oh, and then I got a really cool presentation by the workforce out of Clackamas Community College and a facilitator who's getting, shoot, I should have gotten a hold of his PowerPoint presentation, which without the PowerPoint, we got the notes, but I got names and phone numbers, which could be deadly. And how that community is trying to integrate so many different disenfranchised and franchised people and bringing all those in together. That's just like when we volunteer pulling ivy and we ask the homeless to come in and help with us. And we've met really good friends. We get the high school students, and those are really fun, energetic kids that sometimes wear the worst clothes, but then they jump in and have the best time, That's what really pulls communities together. So because you're talking and you're laughing, you're giggling together. The babies are down in the ivy with us. Remember, we had a little 2-year-old baby down in there with us, with the parents. The parents were being very attentive. But I was suggesting at all those really cool groups if they could talk about volunteer opportunities, because you just need to invigorate more volunteers one at a time, and it has to start young and get them excited, and then they retire and come back and do it more. So there, gavel me. Shut me up.
Is there anything else for the good of the order? Okay, hearing none.